The silence that followed the Nobel Committee's call stretched through my parents' dining room like a physical presence. 23 family members, gathered for what was supposed to be my cousin Elena's engagement celebration, stared at me with expressions ranging from shock to disbelief, some even bordering on terror. My father's fork hung suspended halfway to his mouth, a piece of my mother's famous tres leches cake balanced precariously on the tines. His earlier declaration about my worthless research still echoed in the air, colliding with the voice on my phone that had just congratulated me on winning the Nobel Prize in physics. "I'm sorry," I said into the phone, stepping slightly away from the table. "Could you repeat that?" The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, and unmistakably Swedish. "Dr. Martinez, this is Secretary General Anderson from the Nobel Committee. I'm calling to formally inform you that you have been awarded this year's Nobel Prize in Physics for your groundbreaking work on quantum gravity theory and its applications to understanding dark matter." My mother's wine glass slipped from her fingers, the crystal shattering against her best china plate. Red wine spread across the white tablecloth like blood, but nobody moved to clean it up. Everyone was too busy staring at me with the expression of people watching their understanding of reality undergo fundamental reconstruction. "I see," I replied calmly. "I'm honored by the committee's decision." Anderson continued with the formal details, the ceremony in Stockholm, the media requirements, the $1 million prize, while my family sat frozen around the dining room table like figures in a very expensive tableau. When I ended the call, the silence was absolute. My father broke it first. But you're unemployed," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've been living in our basement for 2 years, working on whatever it is you do on that computer." It was true. Since completing my postdoctoral fellowship at CERN, I'd been living in my childhood bedroom. What my family didn't understand was that theoretical physics doesn't require a traditional office. It requires time, computational resources, and the freedom to think about problems that might not have solutions. Living rent-free in my parents' basement gave me the stability I needed to focus on the mathematics that govern the universe's most fundamental mysteries. My sister Carmen, who had been notably quiet during earlier discussions of my career failures, stared at her phone as though piecing together a puzzle. "Miguel," she said slowly, "it says here that Dr. Miguel Martinez is a theoretical physicist who solved the unified field theory problem." She looked up. "That's you." I nodded. The dark matter calculations took longer than expected, but the mathematics worked out last spring. My uncle Roberto, who ran a successful construction company and had spent most of dinner lecturing me about real work, read from his phone with wide eyes. "It says your research explains how 95% of the universe works." His tone suggested he was suddenly questioning whether gravity still pulled downward. The others followed suit, scrolling frantically, each revelation reshaping their assumptions about me. Elena whispered that I had published in Nature and Science and that MIT listed me among their most distinguished alumni. My mother blinked at her phone. "It says you worked at CERN. When did you go to Switzerland?" My father still in disbelief, muttered, "You helped predict the Higgs boson." Cousin David admitted, "I can't understand any of this, but it looks like you've basically rewritten how we understand the universe." Sophia ever practical, noted that Nobel laureates often became wealthy from speaking engagements and consulting. Each discovery laid disbelief with awe, as if my family were reading about a stranger sitting at their own dinner table. Finally, my father looked up from his phone, his expression transformed. "Son, it says you graduated summa cum laude from Harvard, finished your PhD at MIT in record time, and were recruited by CERN before 30. Why didn't you ever tell us any of this?" The question hung in the air. The truth was simple: I hadn't hidden my life, but they had mistaken quiet persistence for failure. Research demands patience, not applause. As they digested the truth, my years of work, the recognition, the $1 million prize, the engagement party transformed into something else entirely. My father's voice softened as he set his phone down. "Miguel," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. We all do. The way we spoke about your work, your career, we were completely wrong." I let the silence stretch a moment before answering gently. You weren't wrong to worry. Theoretical physics is a difficult field. Most research leads nowhere. I was fortunate that the mathematics worked out. The room, once full of laughter and champagne toasts, now held something far weightier. The realization that their unemployed relative in the basement had just redrawn humanity's map of the universe. The Nobel Prize was meaningful because it represented recognition from the scientific community that my work had contributed something valuable to human knowledge. Sophia was reading what appeared to be a financial analysis of Nobel laureates. It says here that Nobel Prize winners often become very wealthy through consulting work, speaking engagements, and commercial applications of their research. She paused, then looked at me. Miguel, are you going to be rich? The commercial potential was substantial but uncertain. Unified field theory could indeed lead to revolutionary technologies, but the timeline for practical applications was measured in decades rather than years. The immediate value was intellectual rather than financial. For the first time, humanity understood something about the universe that had been mysterious since civilization began. My mother approached with the careful expression of someone navigating unfamiliar territory. Miguel, she said quietly, I have to ask. When we told you that you needed practical work, when we worried about your future, what were you thinking? The question struck at the heart of the disconnect that had defined family gatherings for years. While my parents fretted over employment prospects, I had been consumed with mathematical problems that might not even have solutions. The research was all-encompassing in the best possible way. Every day brought new insights into how the universe functioned at its most fundamental level. I was usually thinking about dark matter equations, I admitted honestly. The mathematics required complete focus. I was fortunate to have the time and space to work without distraction. Elena glanced at her phone, reading what appeared to be a timeline of major physics breakthroughs. Miguel, it says unified field theory is being compared to Newton's laws of motion and Einstein's relativity. She looked around the table. You've basically made a discovery that will be remembered for centuries. The thought was humbling more than gratifying. Physics advanced through the accumulated efforts of thousands of researchers building on each other's insights. My contribution had been to develop mathematical tools that bridged the gap between quantum mechanics and relativity, possible only because of the foundation laid by countless scientists before me. Carmen found a video of physicists discussing the implications of my work. They're saying your research opens up entirely new fields of study, that it will take decades for the community to fully explore. Miguel, she hesitated, eyes wide. You've basically given humanity a new way to understand reality. My father, who had once dismissed theoretical research as worthless, was struggling through a simplified article. Son, he said slowly, I'm trying to understand what you actually discovered, but the concepts are, he trailed off, clearly searching for words. The mathematics describes how matter and energy interact at cosmic scales, I explained gently. It doesn't have much relevance to daily life. Roberto spoke next, his voice hushed with something like reverence. It says here that your research is the most significant theoretical advance since quantum mechanics. How does someone even begin to think about problems like that? The process wasn't dramatic, I said. It started with simple questions. Why does quantum mechanics describe the smallest scales while relativity governs the largest? The mathematics that answered those questions took years of work, but the curiosity itself was straightforward. David looked up from his phone. Miguel, it says tech companies and government agencies are already trying to recruit you for consulting work. And that patent applications tied to your research could be worth billions. The intellectual property questions were complicated but irrelevant to the science itself. Unified field theory was a description of reality. It belonged to humanity, not to me. Sophia found another article. It says Nobel laureates often shape global science policy, advising governments on technological development. She met my eyes. Miguel, you're going to help decide humanity's future. She wasn't wrong. Understanding how dark matter and dark energy shaped cosmic evolution could influence everything from energy research to space exploration. But those conversations would be collective, involving the broader scientific community. My mother was staring at a picture of the Nobel medal on her phone. Miguel, she whispered, this is beyond anything I imagined possible. When you were little, You asked endless questions about how things worked. I never thought it would lead to you understanding how the universe works. Elena smiled faintly. It seems like you've been asking the same questions your whole life, just in more complicated ways. She was right. Physics was essentially an adult version of childhood curiosity. Why do things fall? Why is the sky blue? Why do stars shine? The mathematics was complex, but the motivation was universal. Carmen pulled up a documentary about dark matter. Miguel, she said, her voice trembling, they're saying your research solves mysteries that baffled scientists for decades. You've answered questions about 95% of the universe that no one understood before. The percentage was accurate. Dark matter and dark energy comprised most of reality, but they had remained invisible until my mathematical framework provided a way to describe them. Contributing even that much felt profoundly meaningful. My father approached again, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. Son, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you an acknowledgement that I completely misunderstood what you were doing, and why it mattered. His misunderstanding had been natural. Theoretical physics looks like unemployment to anyone outside the field. The work required long stretches of silence, thought, and apparent inactivity before breakthroughs appeared. Roberto found another article. It says here your research could revolutionize energy, transportation, even space exploration. He looked at me, almost in disbelief. Are you going to change how humans live in the universe? The possibilities are real, I admitted, but still decades away. The engineering challenges are enormous. My contribution was mathematical. The rest will take teams of scientists and engineers working for generations. Elena read the international coverage. Physicists around the world are calling this a watershed moment for humanity's understanding of reality. She looked up, her voice soft with awe. You've basically advanced civilization. I shook my head gently. It's not just me. This is the work of generations. I was fortunate enough to add one piece to the puzzle. David held up his phone. Miguel, your Nobel acceptance speech. You're explaining humanity's place in the cosmos. Honestly, you sound like a philosopher of the universe. The description wasn't wrong. Physics had always lived at the intersection of mathematics and metaphysics. My mother, who had spent years urging me to get practical work, looked at me differently now. Miguel, she said, they say Nobel winners often become some of the most influential people alive. You'll be asked to advise governments, even international organizations. Her words reminded me that influence was a responsibility, not a privilege. Science mattered only if it contributed to human flourishing, not just intellectual pride. As the family fell into quiet reflection, my phone buzzed again. Another call. This time, from the president's science advisor. I answered on the second ring. This is Dr. Martinez. The discussion that followed touched on classified applications of dark matter and urgent requests for consultation on national security policy. My family sat frozen, listening as I spoke in measured tones about equations, models, and implications. When I ended the call, silence filled the room once more. That was the White House, I said simply. My father stared at me for a long moment, then began to laugh. Not bitterly, not with embarrassment, but with wonder. It was the laughter of someone who had just discovered that reality was far stranger, and far more extraordinary, than he had ever believed. Miguel, he said finally, I think we need to have a very different conversation about your career.